everyone. Welcome to today's class. My name is Megan. I'm so glad you're here. We are going to be painting a really beautiful spring birds inspiration for our class today. I am going to be using watercolor, but I'll always encourage you to use whatever supplies you have on hand. So if you wanted to use a different medium like acrylics or colored pencils or whatever, you can do that. I'll go over a brief list of our supplies before we begin, and then we can jump in and get started. So I am painting on watercolor today, and watercolor paper rather, and I have, I think it's either 9x12 or I think it's 9x12 today. Sometimes I use 11x14. Any size works. I do have an array of watercolor paints. This is a really basic set and it works just fine if you're learning, or even if you dabble here and there, it's absolutely fine. I have a well, which allows me to mix my watercolor colors on. So I'll have that right here nearby. I have an array of brushes, kind of small to medium size based on the design work you're doing. So I'll use the bigger brush for like the larger background area, and I'd use some of those smaller detail brushes for the branches and flowers and stuff. In addition, I would encourage you to grab a pencil for a little bit of sketching up front. Having a pencil is always very helpful. I have a clean basin or cup of water. This allows me to rinse my brushes. Sometimes in watercolor, people have two basins or two cups of water to use one as clean water and one as a rinsing water. I typically use just one because it doesn't get that dirty, but you're welcome to have another second clean basin of water if that's something you wanted to do. And I have today a little bit of painter's tape. I'm going to tape out a frame for today's inspiration. So sometimes I do this in our classes, not always, but I am going to tape out a square that I'm going to be painting within. So you can rip off a piece of tape, and you can figure out where you want your painting to start. So I am just going to do a little bit of a buffer on the top, and you want this to be even as possible. A gentle press, it's fine. Using different painter's tape will not always tear up the paper. So I think if it's the green painter's tape, that won't really peel up the paper. I'm going to push this down pretty firmly though, not just on this edge here, so the watercolor doesn't leak beneath it. So I'm going to do that there. And I'm going to try to leave the same amount on the bottom as the top. The bottom has a little bit more space, but I'm going to do the left and the right as well. So just take a minute. If you wanted to get some painter's tape, we're going to be painting within this box. So I'm looking at the distance from the edge to the side just to visually see, is it even? And I'm going to push the interior side of this tape in. And the trick is you want to center the middle. So one way of doing that is you want to have you want the left and the right edges to be the same. So I want this side over here on the right to visually be the same side as the space on the left side. Same thing with the top and bottom. My top and bottom aren't incredibly even, but they're kind of good enough. If you want to take a minute and get like a ruler and adjust that, that's perfect. But I am going to be painting within this. So you can see a little bit zoomed back that I'm going to be painting within this space. All right. Pretty cool. And sometimes we do this again, and sometimes we don't in our classes, but I like this because I like to hang my paintings in frames, and having a white border around something within is kind of a fun thing to do. So the orientation of today's painting is your choice. So I could really mix this up today. So I'm going to do horizontal painting today. I'll center this for you. Zoom this down here a little bit for our friends. So I'm going to paint, this is a horizontal orientation, and I'm going to paint within this box. All right. So take a minute if you need to get your tape in place. If you're not doing tape, then you're likely ready for the next step. Next, if we take a look at our inspiration, it is two birds on a horizontal tree branch. So imagine two little ovals on a horizontal tree branch. There's a flower coming up, and then there's a branch coming down. So this is where you can decide how big or how small you want your birds to be, okay? So I could make my birds tiny if I wanted to, right? Small little birds, do that. Or you can make them bigger. So one thing you could do is maybe start with a line in the middle of your canvas, or even a little lower of where you want your branch to be. So I'm going to do a gentle line. This is my branch, and you may not be able to see it on the camera, but you'll see it as we get going here. So there's a line right about, I'll put the paintbrush here so you can see my line. There's my line. It's a little lower, and now I'm going to figure out where am I going to put my birds. Now my birds are, look at these guys. One is leaning in, so a little oval, maybe leaning in a little bit. And then this one is maybe an oval kind of, so their heads are kind of together, but to see how the beak is, so you can decide the orientation of your birds. If this bird is looking at us straight on, this bird is looking off to this direction, right? So if you want two birds looking at you, you can do their faces here. If you want birds looking in ways, you can decide that. I think this orientation is really cute. But I'm going to look at the shape of the birds, and I'm going to figure out again how big I want them to be. And I'm going to align them to the right over here. And I'm just going to start to sketch just gently. And I'm going to leave space around them. This bird's going to be snuggly. That's one bird, a little snuggly. I'll zoom this down for you. This bird's a little snuggly, and then I'm going to do another bird. They're going to be touching here. This bird's going to be a little taller. And he's going to be kind of leaning and looking a little bit. And his belly's going to be up and off. And his belly's going to come down and touch. And if you want to do like a little foot down, that's fine. But those are my little birds. I have enough space around them. And we're going to come in and we're going to fill in. We'll do the branch and we'll do all these things. But I want you to have a general sketch for where you want your birds to be. And you also have a choice here as an artist. In any art class, you have choices of how much you want to sketch in advance and how much you want to freehand. So I like talking about that because you can freehand anything you want, but you can also sketch. Now I'm going to be intentional and sketch my flower. And I'm going to do a center, and I'm just going to do a really light hand. And I can always paint something different. I'm going to zoom this down a little bit. See, I'm doing really, I'll actually lift this so you can see it. I'm doing really light pencil, and it's going to look different than this. This is just giving me some shape. So I just did a pencil stem coming up. And then again, if you want to sketch, these can be 4 or 5 petaled flowers. I'm going to do a flower there. If I have a leaf here, I'm going to have another flower here. And this is going to go off the page a little bit. And you can bring another stem down if you wish. I'm going to do another leaf. I'm just doing some rough outlining. And I'll bring this up close in just a minute. So I just did a little rough sketching for flowers and leaves on the bottom side. And then I'll just do a little bit of a leaf over here. Any structure you want to, I did a little leaf over here. any structure you want to get in place. This allows you to determine the overall look and feel of your composition before you put paint on it. Again, as an artist, you have a choice on how much or how little you may want to do. I'm using, and I put some petals on that flower there. This flower is likely going to change a little bit in shape. I do encourage you to do really light pencil marks. And you can even erase some of this too to soften the look and the feel. I might even erase the center of this flower. But I have the overall structure down. The colors, everything's going to fill in nicely. Just about having framework to start with. I also added a little stem here. I have it light because I have pencil and a little leaf here. I have a side leaf. So I'll give everybody a couple minutes to play with your sketching. And then on the underside of this branch, I have a little one branch coming down here. I want you to have a couple flowers and the green leaves as well. So try to have a little bit of a balance visually of a couple flowers and then a couple of green leaves. You can always add these in too, but it may be helpful to get that in now. And I'm just going to put this down. I'll give everybody a couple minutes. There's no rush in these classes. I encourage you to take your time. And the benefits of our recordings is you can pause it and then pick up once you're done drawing. But I always encourage you to join our live classes so you can ask questions, get to know our artist community, say hey to others. And then what we'll do next is I'll talk through a little bit about the process of watercolor. Typically with watercolor, we start in the foreground and we work our way to the background. So foreground objects are the birds, are the branch, are the flowers and leaves. These are kind of all in the same plane of the viewing field. And behind the flowers and the birds is that yellow sky. So the yellow sky will do last. I am going to add a little beak on this bird over here because the beak needs to be present because I can't paint the beak over the yellow background. So if you have a beak that is kind of protruding from the body, sketch those beaks in now. It can be a pointy beak, it can be a long beak. You can play with those details. Okay. See what happens here. In addition to watercolor, we start with lighter colors and we work our way to using darker colors. So I am going to look at my canvas, maybe look at the inspiration and say, well, what are some of the lighter colors that we're doing? And we could easily start with the birds. Their bellies are white with like a little peachy, their heads are blue. So we can start with some light blue for the birds' heads. And the birds also have tails. So if you wanted to give the birds little tails, maybe I'll sketch out my branch a little bit more. The branch does not have to be that thick. I will put feet on the branch, but there are little kind of square looking tails, kind of two feathers. And then this bird's tail is on the other side. So let's see, kind of two feathered tails. That is a terrible tail. Sometimes sketching can be hard, so just take your time and just do your best. Again, I want you to be happy with the width of the tails. This tail needs to be a little longer. Maybe a little wider, maybe a little longer. Lean back in your chair. It's okay to sketch and erase until you get it right. Make sure your body connects to your tails. Tail can kind of have like a little point on it. Sure. And sketching is really hard. Sometimes people are not, drawing makes them feel very uncomfortable. So I just want you to know, just always show up and do your best. These classes are just a learning experience. I am not here judging you. I'm here to support you and give you an opportunity just to be playful with drawing new things and thinking about what you want your composition to be. In these classes, you have an opportunity to do something different or in addition to what the inspiration is. And as an artist, you have a choice on how big you want something to be, how small you want something to be, etc. And it's really empowering when you get to a place where you think and acknowledge those details. And so I'm going to put the inspiration here. I'm going to take my paint tray and we're going to mix a little bit of a blue, like a lighter color blue together. So I'm just going to grab a small brush of choice. I'm going to get a little bit of water, add some water to my palette. And with watercolor, you always want to mix your color up front first. So I'm always mixing my color and finding a color I like before I apply it. Now I have lots of pretty blues over here. So I'm going to grab a little bit of like a different color blue and I'm going to find the right color blue for my birds. It's really kind of a royal blue. So let's see how this goes. That's getting a little darker. So we are going for a lighter blue, but I'll show you how this works. So to make it lighter, you just come in and add a little bit more water. You just use more water to lighten that up. Okay. So the other way of applying paints are with watercolors, you can apply watercolor paint wet on wet, which is you're wetting the surface of your painting first, or you could put a wet brush on a dry canvas. So right now, this is wet on my brush, but it's dry paper. So I'm going to do it this way. If you wanted to wet your surface first, you could basically outline the bird's head with water and kind of let it blend around. I'm not going to do that today. I am going to kind of outline with small brush, outlining the top of the bird's head. I'm going to kind of make two little circles for the eyes. And there's a little nose area too. So this is the hard part. You got to hold white space for your birds. Can be kind of tricky. So maybe kind of finding the underline of the bird's neck. It's a little bit of a V shape. And then you can kind of fill in the bird's head. Again, the body is lighter. So try to hold a little space for the white nose. And I have little kind of white eyes held. I can modify those spaces. If it's not perfect, I can always add a little bit of white after. With watercolor, you don't really want to do that, but it's fine. We're all being playful and learning. But I tried to hold some space. And you can see I have some paint pigment, and I'm just moving that paint pigment around because I want my pigment to kind of dry evenly. You can also use your finger to blot up any areas that you might need. You can use, oh, I also a corner of a paper towel. Paper towels are always handy during our classes. And then the bird's tail feathers are also blue. If you need to do a soft pencil erase on any of your lines before you get started, I encourage you to do that. This bird looks funny right now with its little white eyes and head. It's okay. We're gonna make it look better in a few minutes here, so don't worry. So I just have a little pigment. And I'm just going to do the same thing to the other bird. I'm going to give its neck's going to come down a little further. And I'm going to add some darker colors to this. So I'm going to hold space for the beak. And I'm gonna hold space for the eye. We're gonna add some black to these eyes. So mine ended up being like a medium tone blue. That's okay. And I can always adjust my beak's shape. It's just better to hold white space where you can. But I'm leaving a white area for the eye. So I kind of drew a little circle and I kind of carved off a piece for the beak. Sorry, there's a little bit of a reflection. There we go. The beak's not perfect, but I can adjust it easily. And the beak was actually a little more straight on top, so I can adjust that with a little bit of paint after. I don't mind going in and doing a little bit of touch-up work. But fill in the heads, again, keeping the bellies nice and white because we're going to add some different colors in that area. But don't hesitate to, if you have little legs that are showing, you can do the legs blue. I am going to do white feet on the branch. So if you want to do blue feet, you can. I'm going to do white. So I'm just bringing this little leg down right there. And I'm going to paint this tail blue. We will be bringing in a darker blue accent for the birds. This is just the base coat. Now the thing with watercolors is it dries pretty quickly, but if you want to play with bringing in a darker color now, you can always come in and make a darker blue and bring that in at any point on like the left side of the head as an example. So if you wanted to bring in a little bit darker of a blue, you can use a little water on your brush to be playful about where you bring that in. Go around the eye. Underneath the chin, maybe. On the cheek of the bird, it's a little lighter, so I'm going to keep that a little lighter. I want this bird's head over here just to be off of that. So I'm using my finger. So there's that around the eye. And then if I want it to come down the back a little bit, I can bring that blue down the back a little bit. This is all for fun. So all of our birds are going to look different. It will look more realistic as we go. So just have a little patience with the process. I left a little bit of the lighter blue on the forehead. If you want to bring in a little bit of green into your birds, while it's wet, you could do that, which is kind of fun. I love experimenting in these classes. And I could bring in a little bit of green just to show you, just a little touch of green like into the bird if you wanted to. That could be kind of cute. Because the water, when it's wet, can do some really fun things. So I'm just touching in a little bit of green pigment and I'm just gonna see what happens. Right. And for the bird on the other side, it's up to you on where you might want to bring in a little bit of darkness and contrast. Totally up to you. Maybe a little bit on the tail. I'm just gonna do a little bit on the head, maybe between the eyes. The eyes don't look much of anything right now, but I know that it's all gonna kind of come together. So just have fun bringing in a secondary color. I'm just gonna let these little guys dry. They look pretty funny with these little beady eyes, but we're gonna cover up some of the extra white with black or a darker color. And my chubby little bird over here on my left doesn't have any feet. His body's kind of just sitting on the branch. I'll add some little feet onto that branch after. We'll do the green branch in a few minutes. But we're just gonna let these little birds dry. And this bird over here is pretty wet, so I'm just gonna let it dry. I'm gonna make sure that paint pigment is all in the right places. I do have one little blue leg over here, so I'm just making sure that blue leg is painted. So watercolor can take a while to dry. So we'll typically do one area and let it dry and come back to it. So the next area, and take your time if you're still working, no rush, but I'm going to make a green for the petals next. We'll do the green branch and we'll do the green petals. So I'm mixing a green here. I'm using a little bit of an emerald green. Maybe you have a grass green. This is kind of a medium toned green. So again, you want to start with the lighter side of the greens first. Again, we're going to have a bright yellow background, so adding a little bit of like a limey green color to it. But find a color that you like that works for you. But I want this to be a lighter green if possible because we're going to accent these with a darker green. So look at what I'm doing here. I'm kind of making a lighter tone over here. Maybe I have a little bit of a limey green. And then maybe I'll make a darker tone green over here to do as an accent, just as an example. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come and hold space for these little birds' feet. So I am going to, and if this blue's wet, just try to stay away from it. But I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of hold a little bit of white space here and here. And I'm going to paint green in between. I'm going to stay away from that blue because it's wet, but I'm kind of holding a little bit of space here for the bird's feet. And then I'll go in and do some detail work after, but we're just holding white space on this branch for the bird's feet. And I'm just going to use this lighter green for the branch. I can always make it darker. So I'm just going to do a single pass. Again, if you need to do any erasing of lines, go for it. For me, we're just having fun today, so I'm not being totally crazy. I'm rather have the lines for you to see where I'm painting versus erasing everything in full. But if you wanted to erase things just enough so you can see it, I encourage you to do that. We're getting the branch in. Okay. And I have little white areas held for the bird's feet. I'll go in and do that detail work after. You can determine how wide or narrow you want your branch to be. This is pretty light in color. I might come in with a little bit of a darker and just do a couple of accents, like a little bit of dark accents to this branch while it's wet. So I started with a lighter color and I'm just giving it a couple little bits of dark bits in here and there just to see how it goes. You can let it dry. And then I just want you to find your stem. Give your stem, again, with a lighter color. I'm going to just outline some of my leaves. Play with using dark and light greens as you fill in your leaves. So I'm going to do all my stems. Maybe you outline your leaves. Maybe then you go back and fill them in. I'll do all my leaves for you here. I'm going to outline all of my stems and all of my leaves. Let's see here. So here's a leaf right here. Here's a leaf right here. And I'm not overthinking this. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to relax and smile and just try something new. But think about what colors you like, right? So we're using greens, like dark greens, light greens, and then play filling in these leaves, lighter colors first, and then maybe make a darker color and just see what happens. But try to stay with your lighter colors first and then bring in your dark after. So I'll try to stay within the box, everybody. It's hard for me sometimes, but I'm going to come in here and fill in this leaf first. And then I'm going to come in and fill this leaf in. This is my lighter green, quote unquote. Okay. And I don't want that to dry all the way because you can bring in darker colors while something is wet, which is really fun. So I'm going to just quickly bop around. And then if I wanted to bring in a darker color on one side of the leaf, you can bring in just a darker color. Use the tip of your brush and see what happens. Move the pigment around and see how the darker color blends in with the lighter color. Isn't that neat? Gently move that paint pigment around. but try to keep some of the leaf dark and some of the leaf light. See what happens. And let it dry. Don't mess with it too much. Clean off your brush if you need to go back to a lighter color. But watercolor, one of the best ways to learn is just by doing, seeing how much pigment to apply, how to mix your paint pigments, right, with your waters. I'm going to go get a little bit of a darker color. Bring it in, see what happens. Because when it dries, you can always go back and you can change the way it looks. You can make things darker, but you can't make things lighter. That's why it's always important to do some of your lighter colors first. Okay. And you can see how I have a little bit of a gradient on some of these leaves. Now, while things are wet, you can use like the corner of a paper towel to like dab some of it off. Like if you don't like it, just dab it with your finger. Get that, and it will pick it up so easily. But play with using multiple colors within a given leaf and see what happens. Kind of neat. And there's so many different ways of using watercolors. So my way is one way, and we do different things, all the time. So always take these classes and take all of your art projects with stride. It's all practice. It's all trying something for fun. Try not to take it too seriously. And if you don't take something too seriously, you'll have a lot more fun doing it because you'll be less critical of your work. Sharon, how's this going so far? Does it feel pretty easy? I feel like it's pretty easy so far.
Yeah, so I think I might have erased a little bit too many of my lines, so I'm trying
That's
to figure out
okay.
where I did.
That's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, this part so far is good.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Cool. So I love this. So my birds, I'm gonna mess with my birds' colors a little bit. I'm not really happy. Some of the blue didn't like blend in the way I wanted it to, so I'm just gonna kind of blend these in a little bit here. I'm not worried about these white beady eyes yet because we're going to mix and mingle there a little bit. I'm gonna put a little bit of green on the birds' heads because hey, why not? A little bit of bluish green, one of my favorite colors. We are going to do a little bit of like kind of fun outlining around these birds too with a darker color after, just to be playful. But again, with watercolor, we work our way with the lighter colors and we work our way back to the darker colors. So we had any dark accents after. So we'll be doing that as a touch up at the very end. Okay. So as we look at the flowers, again, take your time with the leaves. If you need more time there, take it. But we're going to be doing, I want you to look at the inspiration with me, and I want you to recognize the leaf, the flower colors. So what do you see for flower colors? We work our way from light to dark. So I see a light peach. I see a light yellow for some of the flower colors. And there's like some light peaches on the bellies of these birds. But the other thing I want to point out is that we are holding white space, ladies and gents, with the flowers. See how there's white on the edges and on some of the rounded bellies of these petals. And on the underside of these bird bellies, there's a white line. So I want you to think about how you want to hold white space as we bring in our next color. So I'm going to make a peachy color. And that is like orange and red, a really little bit of orange and red. So I'm going to grab like an orangey color and a little bit of a blood orange. So it might be an orangey color like this. And then you just use more water to dilute the color, right? If you like this, and you want to make a little bit of a yellow over here as an accent, I wouldn't hesitate to do that. So if you want to have a little bit of a yellowy color to pull in for, use that too. I just diluted my yellow with my orange, so I'll make a little bit more of the yellow. They were a little too close together in the pen. All right. So I'm making kind of that peachy orange first, and if you want to have a yellow ready, you could have a little bit of a yellow ready. But again, we're holding white space. So I'm going to go to my peachy orange first. It's very watery. And let's just do under these birds first. So if your birds are dry, you can do under the neck and under the head. I'm going right up to the blue. And I'll zoom down for you. There we go. And I'm gonna fill this body in. Again, you can pick and choose. It can be a little more orangey. It can be a little more pinky and peachy. I can make this peachy by adding a little bit more red. Ooh. Again, I want to try to stay lighter. Ooh, so I just added in, this is going to be a happy little mistake here. It's a little orange on his chest, but hey, might as well like try it. But I'm going to just bring this in and down. I kind of have a blend of colors, which is kind of like what watercolors is all about, right? And at the bottom of the body, I'm going to leave kind of like a white ring. So I'm going to go down enough so I see a white ring. Again, play with what colors you want to bring in here. I added this orange kind of by accident and it kind of looks neat. But you want to go right to the edge, right to the outside of the body. And I'm going to leave a white edge around the bottom. I'm going to add in a line down there after. If you like this orangey red, you can touch in maybe a little bit more. It's kind of neat. See what happens here. Keep in mind the background's going to be yellow. So you want this color to be different than yellow. So maybe you make it a little bit more red. Ooh, it's going to look kind of fiery a little bit. That's kind of fun. And then it can be very wet. Just let it dry and see what happens. So mine's very wet and I'm just going to let it dry. I have a white ring on the bottom. You're going to do the same thing to the other bird on the other side. I'm going to start light by using orangey yellows. Go right under, and this bird can be even more red. It's up to you. I'm doing lighter at the top and I'm going to make it a little more red and orange to the bottom. So any way you want to fill in these birds, I'm going to leave that white ring at the bottom of the belly. I'm going to add a little bit of that peppy fire down here to the bottom of the belly, above that white line. We're going to be using, and blend these colors, see what happens. This is kind of fun. See how this is wet right on wet. So I made it wet first with the yellow, and then I'm bringing in a couple touches of color. Kind of nice, kind of fun to see what happens there. So one is pretty fiery. The other one's a little more subtle if I want to make the other one as fiery. I'm just grabbing a little bit more of an orangey color, and I'm just going to touch in a little bit more of that fire, blood orange color, and I'm just going to move it around, move the pigment around with the tip of my brush and just see what happens. And then don't touch it, like let it dry. Don't muck it up too much. That's the tricky part. So I'm going to let those little birds dry. And I'm going to use the same orangey yellow color for, think of like the interior of these petals, the flower petals. So I want there to be some, I have 4 petals on this flower. I want there to be white on that top edge. So you can decide how much white space you want to hold. I'm doing white on the top edge because that's just kind of what's happening. We're doing light colors only. We are going to add centers. So that's 4 petals. So it looks like I have like a little blotch of color. That's all you need. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I want my flowers to match, so that's why I'm doing this all now. Make sure you have quite a bit of water. I'm doing wet brush on dry paper. I could do wet on wet. That's fine too. But this is wet. These are wet and wet. And I'm going to come in and add some vibrancy in a minute. But you can let things dry a little bit if you don't want things to bleed, right? So as a watercolor artist, you make choices on how dry to leave something. And I'm just gonna leave the edges of these flowers white because I'm gonna be painting yellow around everything. So those white edges are really gonna stand out. If you want to bring in any additional colors, so like I might want to make like a little bit of a purpley pink color. That could be kind of fun. Purpley pink. Ooh. Ooh. If you need to get another tray, grab another tray. Again, if you don't want things to bleed, give this a minute to dry before you do your purples. If you want to add any other colors like this orangey color, like if I wanted to add like a touch of the fiery, I can add just a little bit of like an orangey color to some of this. But I'm going to let this dry because if I add purple, it's not going to look purple. It's going to get all mucky. So give it a minute to dry before you add purple. I'm just adding a little bit of a pop of this orange just to give it a little bit of a fun secondary color. Something magical happened down here. I don't know. If you like something, it's called a happy little accident. You can do that a little bit more in other places if you want to. Kind of matches the bird's bellies too, a little bit, right? So I have white around the edges of each of these flowers because I want to see that because I'm going to put in some brilliant yellow around the whole background. I'm going to go as bright as possible, which I usually don't do, but it's kind of fun to integrate bright colors sometimes in our lives. But I am going to add some purples and pinks to these flowers, but I am not going to I'm not going to do that yet until that orange is dry. So with watercolor, sometimes you need to wait again for something to dry before you touch it. And it's hard. Watercolor, you have to have a lot of patience with. So I'll bring my camera down just to show you. It's so simple what I did, nothing fancy at all. You can see how of my pencil lines. I have pencil lines there still. If I need to go erase some of those, I will. Sorry, the zooming is not great when I'm going in and out, so apologies, but you get the gist here. I am going to let that dry. Now my birds aren't done yet, which is fine. I'm being patient with my birds because I'm going to use darker colors for the eyes, to outline the beaks, to outline the bodies. These are all base colors. I'm even going to use some darker colors. If you ever want to even use like a ballpoint pen or an ink pen or a micron pen to do any outlining detail, you could. I have a very loose handbook of like what you can and can't do when you create art. So if you ever want to use a Sharpie or a micron ink pen to do outlining, go for it. Like there are no rules based on your own creative interpretation or what you want to bring to your art. Just do whatever you want. But with watercolor, it's very important that you let things dry at this point before you add in your pinks and purples, which is a really beautiful part of this painting. So I'm going to be incredibly patient and let that dry there. I'm even going to let my greens dry because our next step is to do the yellow background. And we need everything that's touching the background area to be dry. The only areas for me, all of my green is dried at this point. The surrounding of my flowers is white, so I could paint there. I have a little bit of wet here on this bird's tail. So I would probably stay the yellow away from there. But at any point you want to start working on your yellow background, that's a really great thing to do because it gives all of your elements an opportunity to dry. Okay. So, again, on how you apply the paint, you can take a wet brush and I'll show you an example of this. If you paint water, this is called wet on wet. If you paint water, I'm doing a corner down here just to show you, and I paint around this flower. I have wet water right here. If I take some of this yellow, I'm doing wet on wet. Okay. So I'm putting yellow on here on a wet spot. You use wet on wet when you want to do like lots of blending of colors, or you want to have more manipulation of like how one color blends to another. In this instance, I feel like I can do the same thing with doing a dry paper wet brush. So I'm just going to get my yellow ready over here on my plate. And I'm going to try to go for something really punchy. So this is like a lemon yellow. I want this to be really high in pigment. So who can like tell me, maybe think about it. Um, I probably don't want like extra water, right? If I want it to be really punchy, I can easily just start painting this on. Look at that color. So I'm going to go underneath. I'm going to go around my flowers. I'm using kind of a small to medium sized brush. Anywhere that's wet, stay away from that area. I'm using the corner of this brush to kind of dance it into areas. I'm going around my flowers. I'm using the corner of the brush to get in between. And this is where things can really start to jump out. Try not to paint on things. Don't put yellow on a blue tail like I just did, then it would turn green. So be really careful to go around your objects. Again, I'm going to stay away from this blue if it's a little wet. I don't want the blue and the yellow to smudge because then it will mix to green. And I'm going to make this really punchy. So I'm just going to, if you need to get another plate, you want to make sure that the yellow is constant. I'm going to get some more of this yellow on my plate ready to go. And again, I'm going to go right to the edge of this blue tape. I'm going to go slowly around my green. If you want to leave a little white space around your objects, you're welcome to do that. It's totally up to you. This is really fun. If you want to add in a secondary color to create a gradient with your yellow, this is you. So you can pick and choose on, what additional elements or gradients or blends that you want to bring to your painting today. I'm going to keep this yellow for now. I had a really cool idea in the car today of doing like some sunlight kind of coming in using like a white haze on top of this, but I'm going to get this down first. I'm going around these little white flowers, and you can see these little white flowers are starting to stand out. I was intentional to leave that space. If you need to use a smaller brush with your background color, maybe some of you are doing a different background color, grab a smaller brush. I will grab a smaller brush for sure to get into some of these nooks and crannies because I don't want to paint on anything. Ooh, so look, I got too close to this bird and it got wet. So now I'm going to take a clean finger and I'm going to quickly grab, I got a little bit of green in my sky. So I'm going to quickly grab a wet paper towel and use a wet paper towel to clean up the green that I just got in my sky. It's also going to kind of clean up that bleed. That's what happens when you get near something. So I fixed it. So I'm going to let that dry. If you go near something that's not entirely dry yet, it will bleed one color into another. So I'm so glad that happy little accident happened. So you can try to be careful on your end, but it happens. And again, you can go back to an area, just give it a little space to breathe and dry off before you go to a certain space. But everyone in these classes is using a different amount of water and a different amount of pigment. So just use your best judgment to fill in your background. And I never ever use, like, I never do bright yellows like this. So it's kind of fun to paint something different. I'm going to go around my bird's head. This bird's head is dry. And I'm going to fill this in. Now play with adding maybe a little bit more yellow pigment in one area and a little lighter pigment in another. This bird just keeps bleeding into my, so again, a paper towel, wet or dry, you can kind of dab it and like just say, hey, you, stop bleeding everywhere, dry up. We're going to do a dark outline around much of this, so it's really going to stand out. It's going to look really cool. I'm going to get a smaller brush to get into some of these nooks and crannies. And I may even add more yellow. So I am just going to go at my own pace, which I encourage you to go in your own pace, grabbing a little yellow, go in between some of these areas, go around. If you have any white areas on the edges, go around those areas. If you want to add in a little extra pigment here or there, you could do a little bit of design work maybe with a smaller brush. If you wanted to add little swirls or like some type of pattern or texture to this background, you could easily do that. I'm gonna go around these flowers just a touch. Go around my petals. Slow down and take your time for these steps. I have a really rich yellow happening here. I'm grabbing more pigment than watercolor, so I'm getting a more of a rich yellow color. I like that. So the more you experiment, the more you're gonna see, oh, I like that color, or I like the way that that's blending into that. You'll notice these things that just start to happen as you switch brushes or you try using more pigment or more water for these elements. Maybe you want to touch up some of your flowers, your flower edges. Maybe you want to do a little bit of erasing. I'm just going to outline my flowers with a little bit of this bolder pigment just to see what happens. It's really neat to have a little bit of that. Maybe it's a darker orangey yellow. Maybe it's this or that. So just be open-minded and playful with how you're applying paint in different ways. That could be the brush. It could be the dark or lightness of the pigment, right? I'm gonna go underneath this bird. This bird's off of the branch a little bit. So I'm gonna put yellow under the underside of this body. So you can see I have a little bit of space on the underside of this bird. The other bird's sitting pretty flat on my branch, as we talked about. Go really close to the bird's heads. Make sure that those are nice and tight with that background color. So kind of follow your eye around all these details to ensure that a first coat of this background color is in. Dancing around each of the elements. Again, it's up to you on how much white space you want to leave, if any. I still have little white marks left on my branch for my feet. That was done intentionally. But I'm just going to eyeball and go around each of these branches, go around each of these leaves to make sure that, for me, that there's no white. I really want these to be filled in. My objects are cleanly outlined. That's important to me for this inspiration today. But take a deep breath. I hope that you're enjoying class so far. I want to thank you for being here. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, I encourage you to subscribe to get alerts and notifications of other upcoming classes. If you are a Patreon member, you have access to our live classes. So I encourage you to check out our Patreon community if you are not familiar already. I like the contrast and I like that more rich color. So If anybody wants to, change their background color and make it more rich, you could add in, maybe an orange or another darker color to make it look antique-y. Totally up to you. This is your opportunity to continue to personalize this, and I'm just gonna have fun with it. But Sharon, let me know when it's a good point for you. I'd love to hear how it's going. If you like that bright lemon yellow, use that. But it's okay to be playful with, what colors you're using here. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't want to say a mustard, but we're gonna go with a mustard maybe. I don't know. So I'm just gonna dance my way around some of these flowers with this kind of more mustardy yellow just to see what happens. Setting a little bit more of a darker contrast to the yellow, which is kind of fun to see how it's applying differently. So that's the color right there with no yellow. And if I use some water and I kind of blend it in and dance my way around some of these objects, you can use water to blend it in, spread that pigment out. You can do any kind of brush strokes you want. I'm trying to do like a horizontal left, right, left, right. I'm using a small brush. If you wanted to use a larger brush to see kind of what happens, that's fine too. I might add a little bit of contrast around the bird's beaks. This beak is not done. Again, I'm just playing with these background colors and letting it dry so I can go back in and play with some of my other objects. We do need to go into the flowers still. I like the contrast around those birds. I'm going to go into the flowers still, but I want my flowers to be totally dry before I add my pinks and purples, right? We're also going to do some black contrast in the center of these flowers, but we're going to do that at the very end. I may do a little bit more darker contrast on my leaves. So you can bounce around as much as you want, but I'm going to let my background dry and I'm going to add in a little darker green contrast for my leaves because for me, that's something that I want to do. So I might make a darker green on my plate here. I have lots of fun colors. So I have a little bit of this green. I want something darker than that. So if you have black, you can always add a touch of black to add more contrast. It's getting darker. I dip my brush in a little water. I dab my brush on my color, and that's getting pretty dark right there, which is great. So I'm kind of tipping my tray and you can see the pigment spreading. It's really kind of neat. I'm going to add a little bit of a darker contrast to some of these leaves just to see what happens. So and I can use water to spread it. So I can use a little water. And if you have too much pigment in one area, move it around. Use your finger to blot it off. Anything goes. If you want to put a little more pigment, I'm going to add a little more darker pigment on my stems and these branches. Those need to be darker to me. So this is where we work from light to dark. We did lighter stems, lighter leaves. You can go back in and darken things, but you have to be really cognizant and thoughtful because once you make something darker, it's really hard to make it lighter. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. You could just do an accent piece, making something, an accent of it to be a little darker. Like I just could do the underside of this branch, right? So you can do this technique in detail on any object in your painting today. And it's really fun and empowering to have an opportunity to pick and choose what you want to do. So maybe I'll just do a gentle outline of the leaf with a darker color as an example. So I'm using my time to work on the leaves. I am going to do work on the flowers as well. You basically keep working on something until you feel like you're happy with it. You can also just take a break too and come back to it. Don't feel like my leaves are done yet. And it's okay to feel that way. Um, I got a little bit of green on my yellow over here. So I'm just gonna use my finger and wipe it off. Again, a paper towel, wet paper towel, corner, just to do a little bit of cleanup if you need to. A little bit of cleanup work. I am going to add a little bit of black, or a darker color for some outlining at the very end. So again, I'm working light to dark. I'm going to add a little bit more green contrast to the branch. It's just what I want to do today. It's just about incorporating your own ideas and styles. And you may not even know what your style is. For me, I don't really have a watercolor style. Maybe some of you think I do, but it's something you kind of just discover and it kind of happens over time. Okay. So, I'm going to put my green down, let my green dry, and I'm going to go work on the dark purple and pinks on the inside of the flowers because that'll be a really fun step for me. And you can consider that as well. But I have a little bit like of a reddish color here. I want it to be a little more pinky purple. So maybe I take a little bit of red and I mix a little bit of red and purple together because I kind of want a fuchsia. So to make a fuchsia, it's basically purple and red mixed together. Clean off your brush to get more of the red pigment. Ooh, there we go. It's getting punchy. That's a fuchsia right there. It's pretty dark, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little touch of this fuchsia on the interior of these flowers. Now, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet. I'm just going to kind of freehand it because I'm going to put some dark purple in there too. I don't have very many flowers, do I? And if I want to take it and spread it out a little bit, I can. But I'm going to just use the tip of my brush and just kind of move it around. Now I'm going to put a little bit of dark purple in here as well. I like want a really like contrasting purple. Oh baby, I just got it. So I can let this dry or I could be a little daring and just do a little bit of the dark purple and I'm just going to show you what happens. It takes it over, which you may or may not like that. It might take it over a little bit. I'm doing a touch and I have a little bit of like white space on the interior. I can always come in and add some more of this pinky stuff, but I just did a little bit of that. And I can do some more pink around this, but I'm going to let that dry, right? Being really intentional. So I added some of the purple. I'm going to spread it out a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. But this is where you have patience, where you can add multiple colors to flowers. I'm going to add a little bit of a darker, I need to do an outline around my wet flowers to make them stand out. So I'm going to figure out, and I'm going to talk through it right now, but what I want my darker outline colors to be around some of my leaves and some around some of my flowers. The inspiration has like a darker color, like a darker navy or a darker black. I might try to do like a dark navy just to see what happens. And I'm gonna mix blue and black together. I'm gonna use the smallest brush I have, and I'm gonna do gentle outlining in some spots. The reason I'm gonna do that is because it will help me kind of figure out how much more detail I want to add to the interior of my flowers. So I'm making like a dark navy color on my plate right now. And I'm gonna find the smallest brush I have to do a little bit of just delicate outlining. And the outlining doesn't have to be everywhere. So let me grab a tiny brush. Let's see. And I have all basic acrylic craft brushes. So just something with a fine tip. This is probably, oh, this is a number 3. This is more of this is a brush that has a very long tip. It says it's a 0. Most, I sell a lot of basic acrylic paintbrush packs like this. And usually in these basic craft paint, there are lots of little ones. So use one of the little ones that you have that you may have gotten in a pack like this. If anybody ever needs brushes or supplies, definitely drop me a note. I'm happy to send you supplies if you need it at a very affordable price. So happy to help you there. But I'm going to use a small brush of choice. And I am going to do a little bit of gentle outlining around some of these flowers because one, I want to see what happens, and it's going to help me kind of ground myself in any additional detail. And I don't know how much outlining I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of follow my gut. So be as brave or as conservative as you wish here. Um, you can wait for me to paint a little bit so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to do a little bit of this everywhere so it matches, just for sharing. So I went all the way around that flower. But the thing is I'm going to go on the underside of these leaves. I'm going to go on the side of my stem. It's going to have a little bit of this kind of darker shade to some of these objects. So I'm doing this navy blue. I'm going on the underside of some of my leaves. Again, if anything I'm painting, it's all dry right now. I'm not painting on anything that's wet because anything dark is going to bleed right into it. So whatever you paint, make sure it's dry. But I'm just doing a little bit of this darker detail work. And I can't go, oh, I can go further down. Bring this further down for you. See this? I will put black on the middle of these flowers. I'm going to wait for this darker color. I'm going to wait until the middle of my flower is dry. But I'm going to outline this petal here. And it's bleeding a little bit here, so I can just dab it with my finger, clean it up after. I'm gonna go around. So for me, this is adding another level of contrast to my painting. I'm doing this intentionally. If you don't like this, you don't have to do it. I'll go up a little bit. Oop, sorry. I'll edit that out, Sharon. All right. So I am going around, again, I'm using a small brush and I'm just gonna go around some of these objects. Again, your intent, if you wanted to do this or not, you can see what mine looks like. You may want to just think about it. That's fine too. But I'm gonna do this everywhere so it looks pretty consistent. You can give your flowers kind of a little bit of a ruffle edge. if you wanted to. It kind of helps draw out a lot of the details that you've done, which I like. My outlining could be even be darker. I'm gonna do like little toes. One, two, three little toes for my birds. I'm gonna outline my birds with this darker color. I'm gonna fix the eyes and do all that work. This bird is on top of this one. My bird has little toes now. Again, everyone has different size brushes. So if you don't want to use, if this outlining isn't working for you with your paintbrush, use like an ink pen or use a micron pen to do this detail work. Use the tip of a Sharpie. You're welcome to do that. The reason I'm doing this now is because I'm letting the middle of my flowers dry because I need to do a dark center there. But also it's another level of detail that I'm applying for my painting today. And it'll allow you to figure out where you may want to add in additional details to your objects once you've done any outlining. So I'm kind of going, you can go gently. I have a really fine brush, so I'm going around all of my objects because it's a very fine line. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But by outlining, it's giving your objects an opportunity to dry, where you can go in and do an additional level of detail if you wish. This is so different than what I usually paint. It feels so good and liberating to be like, I can paint something different. Imagine that. It's really interesting to think differently, act differently, all those things. It triggers new things about ourselves, and it can mean and feel. You could add texture with the tip of your brush for the tail and some of these with the tips, and you could add some feathers kind of styles too with a small brush. But by doing something different, it can be very empowering just to be like, oh, I can paint something different. How about that? So I'm just mixing a little bit more. I'm outlining my branch. So everybody's doing something a little different at this point. I just always want you to follow your intuition in these classes. I'm here to inspire you, and that may be to do something and incorporate an idea that you have. You might be nervous to do, but with a little encouragement, you may just take the leap. And the more you can personalize your art, the better. I'm doing a gentle outline on the top side of this branch and on the bottom side. Again, I have a tool that works for me, and that's allowing me to do that. If you wanted to, again, whether you're using a small brush or a pen, you can do your bird's eyes as well. So the bird's eyes are black, but they have a little white beady inside of them. So I'm going to try, don't mess up, Megan, to do a little black eye, but I'm leaving the middle of the eye white. I'm not using the right brush for this, but I'm going to try anyways. Excuse me. Go back and get a little bit more paint. Have patience. Try holding your brush up and down, straight up and down. Have a little bit more control of the angle. Your bird's nose is going to be a little upside down triangle, which I tried holding shape for that. So there's one of my birds has a little bit blacker of an eye than the other. I can go in and fix that. Again, I'm not using the right brush, so I should probably switch brushes. And if this is still wet, I may be able to dab it up. So if you paint something you don't like with a little water, I can quickly, oh, look at that. I can quickly go in and dab it up. And I just kind of erased that bad eye. And I can go in and redo it. I'm going to use the right brush to do that. I can also use a micron pen. So let's see. Let's see if I have a better brush. This brush might work. So just take your time with these details, as always. See if this brush is any better. It's wet, so I'm going to let it dry. Yeah, so it's a little wet now. So I'm going to let it dry. I got a little bit of the eye in, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to wipe this up again. I'm going to let the eye area dry. Since I wiped it with a wet cloth, it's feeling pretty wet. So if I put more ink there, it's going to spread. So I want it to dry completely so I can get the eye right. This is a really good example of not rushing the process. And I'm going to pause on the eyes, but I can keep working my way around other areas. Like if I wanted to do the beak for me, it kind of comes straight in and then it kind of pulls down. I'm just going to gently outline this little bird. And I'm going to put his little feet in here. I just did 3 little toes, vertical lines for toes on the branch. So again, this class, you do as much detail work as you wish. You could do as much or as little outlining as you wish. I just want you to know if you're new to these classes with me, I always follow my gut. Like, let's be real. I always follow my gut because I want you to, I want to demonstrate to you that you can incorporate your own ideas. And I don't want you to be nervous about incorporating your own ideas because art is practice. The only way I've gotten better over the years is by painting. So by incorporating your ideas and by going for it, you will be okay. It's just about going one step at a time and trying new styles along the way. You may want to keep your flowers and everything a little like more flat. You may want to add more texture to your leaves and flowers. This is where you have that choice to keep things the same or add them and add and revise. And it's kind of neat to see how things evolve as we get going. And I really do like what the black outlining has done. I am going to add a little bit of a darker center to some of these flowers, just add a little bit of extra contrast to match the work that I've done for the outlining. I could go heavier on the outlining, and I may. So I'm going to add just a little bit of a dark touch to the center of these flowers to kind of appropriate with the outlining. I'm just doing a couple dots here and there. I may want to add more contrast to the outside of the birds. So like if I wanted to add a heavier outline to have my eye be drawn to these birds. A lot of this is like artist interpretation, right? I wanted the birds to stand out a little bit more. So I can add a heavier outline to some of these birds if I want to. It can be more thick, right? I could just do a second coat. It's totally up to you. If you want to do more work on these birds, art is it's a part of the process is continuing to make modifications. I might do a dark blue line that separates the head from the body, right? It's just about looking at your artwork and making additional choices as you go. And it's a part of each class where you have those choices. Again, my eyes are pretty important to me, so I'm gonna let that space dry pretty quickly, or let it dry entirely before I do the eyes. Which is hard to pause and like not touch something to let it dry. I could add more intricate lines in between these flowers to really show off the petals, right? I can use this dark color to really add more detail to spaces if I wish. Absolutely up to you. So I'm making my flowers come to life by just kind of bringing in those loose shapes. In our Patreon space, we have a chat community where you can share your artwork. We always love seeing what you came up with during our classes. So if you are enjoying today's class, if you are trying something new, if you feel really good or scared or empowered, I encourage you to like this video on YouTube as I post it. I love the way that this is evolving. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see some of the detail. It's very simple, and I'm being very delicate with the edges. I love the really simple contrasts with the flowers. I love that I held the white space. These are just choices that we make along the way with each of our artwork. So always just follow what you're being told in your brain or not, right? It's just about seeing what happens when that pen hits the paper kind of thing. So I'm having fun. I'm doing a little bit of, I'll zoom this down again so folks can see. I just did like a little bit of fun kind of scratch work like on these leaves and petals just to add like a fun, it's like a little bit of, I don't know if it's like whatever style this is, but I'm just adding a little bit of texture on these leaves or on the petals of the flowers rather. I'm not really like, I think I'm not incredibly happy with the greens. I feel like I need a deeper, rich green on my petals. I don't know why. Um, so I'm going to take a minute. Again, everybody's going to be happy with certain things that you see on your painting, and some people are not. So I love talking through like the work that I do is it's not perfect, right? And I like talking about that. And I'm either going to be happy with what I'm doing or I see something I want to change or modify. And I think it's really healthy to talk through the acknowledgement of something you want to change because it might get you to think about something that you want to change or modify, and you may not know how to do it, right? So I want to add a little bit more contrast to these green leaves. I think that will help me. I want to add a little more contrast. I made a darker green. I'm just going to come in here and soften this in. I don't know why. I feel like they just need to be a little darker. I'm using a small brush. I'm just playing with the brush I'm using, to be totally frank. I mixed a little bit of like a green and black together to add more contrast to these leaves. I'm doing some light, I have the lighter side of these leaves and I have darker side, but I just want there to be a little more contrast with these leaves today. And some of this is getting dark, and to blend it in, I'll just use a little bit of a wet brush. But if anyone has any specific questions that I can help you with any finishing tips, you're welcome to comment below on this video. You're welcome to send me a message on Patreon or on my website. My website is paintandsipvt.com, but this is Painting with Megan. Please let me know how I can support you because sometimes it helps with a little bit of an ear from someone else. Will kind of get you to a point where you can even send me something. Megan, what am I missing? Megan, what something is off. What is it to you? I can help you overcome whatever it is that you may be dealing with. That contrast is helping. Whenever I paint, and some of you may know this, I like to, the colors are important to me. And I don't paint a lot with yellow. So maybe, Sharon, the yellow is throwing me off. I don't know. But it's important to recognize that and to even talk about it as an artist because you can always make adjustments and fix things as you go.
If the tape, when we take the tape off, if there are any little like rips in the paper,
Yeah,
how do you
very possible. What I
mask
did
that?
in a previous class is I used a little bit of acrylic paint and I touched it up.
So just like a white.
I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I worked for, we did in our last class, we did the waterfall, the rain, the girl holding the umbrella with the colored rain coming over her, and I had bleeding on mine because I don't, this blue painter's tape isn't the best. There's another painter's tape that I just haven't gotten. It's either like green or like pink, Sharon. I don't know.
Okay.
And it holds watercolor better. I'll look it up and I'll share it as a resource in the next class or before the next
Okay.
class.
Thank
We
you.
can try to use the right thing. Yeah. But and the other thing is this blue painter's tape sometimes will rip your watercolor paper unless, so you have to tear it really gently. I don't know if you've run into that or not.
Yeah, I tried moving the tape and I know there's some
Rip mark.
it peeled the layer. Yeah, so you think if I just cover that kind of tear with some white acrylic?
It will help a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
It'll help a little. It's not going to be perfect, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
thank
but
you.
the whatever the revised tape that we use, it will be better for watercolor for sure. Let me see here. I'm just gonna outline this. I like the way the flowers came out. Birds need a
Yeah.
little more love, Sharon. Just a little more love. I'm nervous. I'm gonna grab like a pen or something for these eyes. I'm like terrified. Where's my little I have a black micron. Let's see here. I just bought some new Sharpies. Mm, I have a black micron. Where is it? I just bought some like Sharpies where you I'm just gonna use a Sharpie. So I'm gonna use a Sharpie for these eyes just because I want them to be right.
I found these really tiny little detail brushes that I bought a while ago and forgot I had, so I'm
Is that
excited.
working?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's one little bird's face. That's not bad. And then I'm gonna do the other one over here. And then I gotta do the beak somehow. I think beak is like this bird's so funny over here. He's like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to be. I'm just a bird. I think his head is like needs to be a little more square too. I don't know. It just this bird is just what he wants to be. Um, I may use a little bit of the Sharpie around these birds just for them to stand out a little bit more. And I might use the Sharpie around their toes. So I just want them to stand out in the proper way. There. Oh, and I'm going to outline his leg too. I'll probably put a little bit of white paint in his toes right there. But I like the dark contrast here. So as you're working on your final details, I want you to think about what's important to you. For me, I do like the dark contrast around these elements. I'm just going to zoom this back down. Um, so I may come in with an ink pen or do a little bit of outlining. I think most of the colors are okay. I may touch up the blue on the birds a little bit, but I hope that you all enjoyed this. I'll just give you a quick zoom so you can see some of the details.
Nice.
For anyone that's watching, I want to thank you again for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Take care.